We have two doctors. They're both working for Archaeology Southwest. Dr. Clark received his doctorate from the University of Arizona in 1997, and he's been a preservation archaeologist with Tucson's nonprofit organization for more than 20 years. He has a pretty rich history. He's an adjunct professor at the U of A in the School of Anthropology. He's also worked extensively in the Middle East, particularly in Israel, Syria, and Iraq for over 30 years. And then he's also done a lot of work in Arizona and New Mexico as well. His research is focused on demonstrating the occurrence and assessing the impact of human migration, especially related to the so-called Salado phenomenon in the late pre-contact history. Over the past 20 years, he has been a principal investigator on several collaborative projects funded by the National Science Foundation, which I think is pretty impressive. And they have compiled large databases to reconstruct regional demographic and social networks. And these databases are the foundation. Maybe they're even going to talk about them tonight, but their Cyber Southwest program. And then currently, Dr. Clark is the lead investigator, principal investigator on a National Science Foundation grant to greatly expand that Cyber Southwest. Dr. Watts has been with Cyber Southwest. He's the program manager for that with Archaeology Southwest for the last 3 years. He has a bachelor's from the U of A and then a master's and a doctorate from Arizona State University. He has been active in Southwestern archaeology since the 1990s and has worked in a variety of field lab and data management jobs. Though his recent publications have drifted into computational modeling, hurricane evacuations, and even a theory of technological innovations, he has spent quite a few years in cultural resource management in the state. And his archaeological research focuses on the Hohokam economy and particularly understanding the trade networks and the pottery. So let me see if I've got anything else I need to read, I guess, about that. So I guess I'm going to say, welcome everybody. I mean, welcome to you, doctors. Oh, let me finish up with Dr. Watt for just a second. In his current role at Archaeology Southwest, he manages the database that underlies Cyber Southwest, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. And he also coordinates with various stakeholders, including tribal working groups, principal investigators, other archaeologists, etc. And this evening, our presenters will introduce us to Cyber Southwest, a large graph database and open access web platform designed to allow a variety of audiences to explore the archaeological history of the area. So having read all of that and stumbled over a few big words, I'm be happy to introduce you guys to Dr. Clark and Dr. Watts and the Third Thursday Food for Thought program. So I'm gonna check out of here. You're not gonna see me anymore for a while anyway. Doctors?
Thanks, Butch. I'm going to start off talking, and Josh will correct me where I'm making mistakes, etc. But yes, I'm going to be talking mainly about what we call Cyber Southwest 1.0, our first version of Cyber Southwest. And if we have time, at the end of the program, Josh can focus more on what we're planning to do in the future on our second version, version 2.0 of Cyber Southwest. And I thought sort of two parts to the talk. One is a PowerPoint, just kind of going through the background of the databases that led to CyberSouthwest. And then if I can work the technology right, we will go over to the actual website and do some exploring of some of the functionality of CyberSouthwest 1.0. So let me share my screen here. And let's see here, I think, okay, let's go to the first slide, beginning.
Good.
So everybody, I hope, sees that.
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay. And they probably see me moving around toolbars too.
Just your face.
Okay. Well, just in a nutshell, CyberSouthwest is, there's really two components. There is a very large database. It's a database of databases, actually. And we believe it's probably the largest research-oriented regional database in the Southwest on archaeology. The second part of it is the web platform or the website that lies over the database, which allows you to explore and research various aspects of the archaeological record of the U.S. Southwest. And just to summarize what's in there currently, in CyberSouthwest 1.0, the basic data right now are largely their settlement data. Basically things like site occupation, room count, and we geomask site location, but you can get down to a region at least, or micro region. We're very good on decorated ceramics or ceramics in general. A lot of those, and a lot of Obsidian that's been sourced through XRF, Steve Shackley and others. And also on monumental architecture or public architecture. Those are the strong data sets that we have in CyberSouthwest right now across much of the Southwest. And in the future, we're building out the infrastructure and adding data on chipped and groundstone and plant and animal remains and shell jewelry. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, but I wanted to first start off with just kind of how CyberSouthwest got started and how we got to where we are. Okay. Let's see here. There we go. This is just a summary of the databases that are in CyberSouthwest. And I will talk about each of them or summarize each of them briefly. This yellow shaded area that covers much of the Southwest is called the Coalescent Communities database. The blue line that's basically Arizona and the western and west of the Continental Divide is something called the Southwest Social Networks Project. There's a Chaco Social Networks Project. And then we've added various other databases from the Hohokam and Mimbres area and east of the Continental Divide as well. So first, I'll talk about the Coalescent Communities database that started it all about at the turn of the millennium. And this effort was a very simple effort, a very simple database, but it was the brainchild of Dave Wilcox, Dave Gregory, Brett Hill was working on it, myself, Patrick Lyons, Bill Doley. And the idea was to reconstruct population trends in the late pre-contact period, where most people are living in above ground surface residential settlements. And the idea was to basically collect information, very basic information on residential sites larger than 12 rooms across the Southwest during this interval. And basically it was just site location, site size, which is room count and the date range. And through the room counts and the date ranges and the various site locations, the goal was to basically reconstruct population trends through time. And these next slides I show is just summaries of these population trends at 50-year intervals. So I have a toolbar that's blocking the time here. Can you see AD 1200?
Yeah, just click and grab it, move it out of your way, Jeff.
Okay. So this is based on the Coalescent Communities database. This is the population concentrations at 1200. This is Four Corners area, Mesa Verde, Phoenix, Tucson, Northern Rio Grande, Zuni. And I'll just kind of go through time quickly here at 50-year intervals. Okay, 1250, 1300, 1350, 1400, and 1450. I'll just back up here quickly. This was really the first really systematic attempt to reconstruct population trends in the Southwest using, digital data. And so from 1200 to 1250, we see a bit of aggregation going on. And if you look at this area here between 1250 and 1300, you'll see that that area empties out, and you see a big bump in population in the Northern Rio Grande and sort of in the vicinity of Phoenix as well. That kind of continues through time. You go to 1400, we start losing population, at least in terms of measuring them through architecture. And in the southern Southwest around 1400, you see the Northern Rio Grande Pueblos are starting to set up. And then that trend kind of continues at 1450 AD. And once again, this is an architectural based reconstruction. So we do think there's population loss going on at this time, but also people are changing their architectural styles to render them more archaeologically invisible. So that's the Coalescent Communities database. And that was funded by a NSF project in the early 2000s. Barbara Mills entered the scene in 2008. And basically her goal, she and I were PIs on that project, and Matt Peoples at ASU came on as a postdoc, was to start adding some artifact data to the settlements that we had in the Coalescent Communities database. And since there were so many settlements in the database, we chose the area, basically Arizona and west of the Divide. And that's an area that included about 3,000 sites. And the idea was to add as much ceramic, as much sourced obsidian and public architectural data that we could. And the goal was to reconstruct social networks at 50-year intervals, and with the sites as the nodes in the networks, and basically using painted ceramic wares to get at similarities between sites to establish links between them. In terms of the obsidian, at this point in time, we had about 160 sites and 6,500 artifacts. And these are just the major, the blobs or the obsidian sources that you see in the Southwest. There's San Francisco Peaks, Government Mountain, Mule Creek, Sauceda. And these pie charts are just the distributions at various sites of the obsidian. But the main focus was on decorated ceramics. This is, you can see the patterns in the painted ceramic frequencies, just looking at the pie graphs from the data that we had for the Southwest Social Networks project. We basically converted these pie graph similarities. You can see sort of similarities here, similarities down there. You can start making your groups. But we basically converted them into networks with the sites as the nodes, and again, the painted ceramic frequencies as ties. And since decorated ceramics kind of date themselves, we carved up time into 50-year intervals and basically reconstructed social networks from 1200 to 1450 to 1500 actually across the Southwest, that same late time period that we used for the Coalescent Communities database. And you can't see the sites, but they're at the ends of all these ties. The ties are just showing that the decorated ceramic assemblages that are very sites that have very similar decorated ceramic assemblages, and the color coding is just the distances of the ties. And you're basically through time, you see a very strong northern network until about 1300, and then you start seeing kind of more mixed types of networks during the period of migration and shortly afterward. This large network is largely the Salado network, and you start seeing kind of a Hopi network here and a Zuni network here as well. And then you go through time, 1400 to 1450, the data gets smaller. You still see some Salado network down here, and then by 1450 to 1500, we kind of run out of decorated ceramics at least in the southern Southwest. So that created a large database, and we then went to basically did the same thing to the Chaco region, which basically allowed us to move into a new area, bring in a lot more sites, and go back all the way to 800 AD and reconstruct networks in the Chaco area. So we added basically this graph is showing the Chaco world, and what's being shown here are sites with great houses and great kivas that are both Chaco era and post-Chaco era. I forgot to mention it, but we had I think about 5 million ceramics through the Southwest Social Networks project, and we added about another 2 million artifacts, ceramic artifacts, with the Chaco Social Networks project. And it was Matt, Barbara, and myself on that one as well. And this is just another one of those network diagrams. This is basically downtown Chaco. The sites are in red, and the ties, the ceramic ties, are in various shades of blue. And the bigger the dot, the more central the site is to the network. So you can see in downtown Chaco, you certainly have very central sites. There's a big network to the south. This is another network to in the Mesa Verde region and into southeast southeast Utah. And the only thing really linking them, at least at this time period, is along the Chaco Road. You can see ceramic linkages along the main Chaco roads there. And we did a lot more with public architecture in this grant. And this slide shows Chaco great houses and great kivas, rectangular great kivas, and then all the platform mounds and ball courts in the Hohokam region, which were all entered into Cyber Southwest. In 2017, we got a large NSF grant through what was called the RIDAR program, which, if I remember correctly, stands for Research Implementations for Data Intensive Research. And this was our chance to basically bring these databases together into one unified database, also add data from areas that we didn't have data from previously, particularly the Village Ecodynamics project, both in the Northern Rio Grande region and the Mesa Verde region. areas that were in either in Colorado or Utah or east of the Divide. Evan Giomi did his dissertation on the Rio Grande region. Scott Ortman joined the project at this point. We added a lot of data from pre-1200 data from Hohokam and the Mimbres region. And major goals of this project were first to basically clean up and link all these databases into one common mega database. And we found out that we were kind of exceeding the capacities of Access and Excel, which are relational databases, and decided to move to something called a graph database that Josh may have a little time to go into at the end. Otherwise, you can Google it, but it's basically a different type of network structure or database structure that looks much more like a network than a spreadsheet. And the biggest thing I think we did with this grant was we made all this data available in an open source web platform, which I will be demonstrating to you after this PowerPoint. And I forget when we launched it. I believe it was in June of 2020. I think it was right after COVID hit. And that was Cyber Southwest 1.0. And of course, because this is open access and available to everyone, we needed to protect sensitive information. And the most sensitive information, of course, is the site location. So basically, in Cyber Southwest, when you go to it, the sites have been geomasked or jittered so that they're away from their exact location. And this is actually there's two tiers of access to Cyber Southwest. There's a public access, which really changes the site location quite a bit from where it actually is. And there's a research tier that you basically have to be vetted at the level where you'd have access to a state level database, which actually gets you a little bit closer. But this just shows you where the Romero Ball Court Village is, where you can visit in Tucson. And this is where Cyber Southwest puts it on in the public access version of the database. And this is where it shows up in the research access level of the database. Actually, in this case, the research access is further off than the public access, but that's just kind of a random chance. So all site locations in Cyber Southwest have been geomasked. So with that, let's see. Oh, yes. This is the current metrics of what's in Cyber Southwest. At this point, we have information on about 23,000 settlements. There's more than 16 million ceramics, more than 17,000 XRF sourced Obsidian artifacts, and more than 1,100 public architecture features. So with that, I'd like to just give you a little tour of Cyber Southwest and some of its capabilities. To do that, I think I have to stop share. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And share screen again.
Okay.
Find your browser.
Okay. My browser wants to take up the whole page. Okay.
You can click on the share button.
Okay. Are people seeing my screen again?
Yeah, we're seeing half of the browser. There we go.
There it is. Yeah.
There it is. Okay, good. All right. So basically, if you just Google Cyber Southwest, it'll take you to this page where you can easily register after a simple registration process. You can have access at least at the public level. And I am logged in just for sake of ease of using this, but where the action is under the Explore the Database tab. Oh, I'm not logged in. Okay. So this is Cyber Southwest. First I'll just take you through a very simple exercise of finding, let's say, a specific site. You can either do it by name or recording system, and there's a number of recording systems that we support on the site. But let's just do it by name, and I'll choose a simple one. Let's look what Casa Grande. And every time you do something in Cyber Southwest, you have to press new search if you want to do something else. And you see that, oh yeah, there's a 2 there. And that means there's basically 2 sites that have the name Casa Grande in them. And if you zoom in, they separate into individual sites. And there's, if you click on it, there's a Casa Grande 9.5 Hilo Pueblo. And then this is the main site. If you zoom in even further, you can see I'm on the research level access, and it's putting Casa Grande in a residential development. The National Monument, I believe, is just to the north of 80. Yeah, just to the north. So just give you an idea of the geomasking. So if you click on Casa Grande, it brings up the site record. It gives you the some general locational information. It gives you our best estimate of a beginning and end date and maximum number of rooms. And then sorted by material type, and we will have more than just ceramics and XRF Obsidian as we develop more artifact classes. You can just click on ceramics, and it gives you a list of all the ceramics from the site. Or the ceramic reports as references. You click on one of these and you get a ceramics table with all the ceramics from that particular reference. And I should say that, and I forgot to say during the orientation, we spent many person hours standardizing all the variants of ceramic types across the Southwest to fit into one standardized database for ceramics. I think we started out with slightly under 10,000 ceramic variant names, and we reduced it to about under 3,000 ceramic types. And I think there's, between 300 to 400 ceramic wares. So everything you see in Cyber Southwest is standardized, given you can agree or disagree with it, but it's a standardized platform that you can then do regional comparative analysis. So here's a typical data table. You can toggle the ceramic dates, and these are our ceramic dates for all the ceramic types that are present. And you can also, I don't want to mess up my screen, but you can also download it, and it'll appear in your download folder as a CSV file, which you can read by access. So if anybody's doing ceramic data entry, and they're not looking at Cyber Southwest, they really should, at the very least, because just about every ceramic source out there at this point is in Cyber Southwest. And if you find one that isn't, we'd be interested in getting that ceramic source. I'm just clicking to lower the table. So same thing for XRF Obsidian. There's 2 sources here. Go to Blowendorf, get the reference, and you get a table. We use Steve Shackley's system for Obsidian source group and source, and Obsidian as well is I think we're getting very close to having almost all the sourced Obsidian that we at least can access available on Cyber Southwest, and you can download the table. To get out, you can see there's two tabs here, and this is the site tab, so that this just sends me back to the Explore tab. And let's just do a search by citation as well, because I want to do. Let's say I want to see all of Steve Shackley's Obsidian reports. Type in Shackley, search. And as you zoom out, you can, the various reports or the various citations aggregate. So you can see we have, 167 reports from Shackley in this database. There's actually even more, because there's actually some reports that his name doesn't show up on. And then as you zoom in, you get the individual sites as you zoom in. So you go to Point of Pines Ruin, XRF, there's a Shackley report, yes. And you can, if you have the year, you can type the year in as well and get more specific information. Explore sites. So this is, but right now you're basically doing individual sites, but you can either explore sites or explore artifacts on the Cyber Southwest interface. So just to kind of run through exploring sites, there's a number of ways you can do it. I should say that you can make various combinations out of any of these options. So you can choose a map type, and we have a number of options here. We have a tribal working group we've been working with, and so we have modern tribal territories, and we also have, based on the native lands website, ancestral tribal lands, political boundaries, hydrological basins, and watersheds. So let's say I want to see ancestral tribal lands, and I can, let's pick Akimel Adam, and I'll zoom out, and you see a polygon appear of ancestral territory.
Got to hit add if you want to add it.
And then, yes, add it. And then search. And you can see there's 420 sites in there. And as you zoom in again, you will be able to, they'll break apart into individual site records. And I should say that the beauty of this is that this save sites for analysis, I can, if I move this around, I'll clear what I have. Okay. It actually might take, it'll ask you whether you want to ignore out-of-date data, because there are some data tables that we consider out of date there. And basically, you can save sites for analysis. It's thinking a bit, but in a few seconds, it will add all those 452 sites to your workspace that you can now have access to. So once again, pretty powerful. And let me go back to Explore. So once again, each time you have to press new search, and I'll just get rid of this selection. I'll come back to call it custom Polygon at the end, but let's say I want to see all the ball courts. Once again, there's the sites and their locations. I don't really want to leave the screen given the share screen option, but I will point out that there's a camera tool here that will basically allow you to, what happens when you press this button is it creates a figure of the individual sites. It basically disaggregates all these sites, turns it into a figure, and sends it over to your download in your download folder. So that's what that camera function is for. But just to show you, let's say I want to see the sites that have both well, let's do platform mounds. So 82 platform mounds, zoom in. And then if you want to do a more sophisticated search, you can see the sites that have both ball courts and platform mounds. In this case, you have to press the all function. And I just found this out actually last night, that the only sites that have both ball courts and platform mounds are in the Phoenix area. I didn't realize that before. So something new I found out just playing around with Cyber Southwest. New search. You can also search by artifact classes that are supported by Cyber Southwest, which currently are ceramic and Obsidian artifacts. So basically, you can either, if you know the name, you can type in the name. Otherwise, alphabetically. I love the Solado, so the Solado are associated with Roosevelt Redware, and I want to see the sites that have Roosevelt Redware in them. You can also pick any type within Aware if you want to see the sites that have that in the database. Press add, search, and you can see there's quite a few sites. If I back out, you can see there's over 400 sites that have Roosevelt Redware in them. Just to be a little more sophisticated, let's say I'm also interested in seeing Mule Creek Obsidian. I want to see the sites that have Mule Creek Obsidian and Roosevelt Redware. New search, add the artifact class, go to XRF sourced Obsidian, and there should be a Mule Creek source group. And once again, you want to press the all. If you press any, it'll show it. If it has Mule Creek or Roosevelt Redware, it will show the whole batch. If you press all of it, both criterion have to be met. So it has to have both Roosevelt Redware and Mule Creek with the all function.
Hit the add button first.
Thank you, Josh. I didn't, yes.
It,
There we go. So you get a smaller subset of sites, and each of these sites would have Roosevelt Redware and Mule Creek in them. You can trust me on that. And just to go one step further, let's say you want to see sites that are platform mounds that have Roosevelt Redware and Mule Creek, and the sample gets smaller. You've got 14 samples. And any of these searches you can save for analysis, and either use one of our canned analysis or download this into your own workspace. Let's go to explore artifacts just briefly. This is actually by far my favorite tool because it shows heat maps of any artifact, any ceramic type or ware, or any Obsidian source group or source. So let's go to Roosevelt Redware again. Add. For the explore artifacts, it's generally good to have a minimum sample size for the heat maps that are produced. So the minimum sample size is based on the total ceramics. So let's just say 100 total ceramics in the assemblage. You can play around with time here a bit, which I won't do. I'll click the usual relative percentage, and I'll briefly just discuss this. It's better really to show it, but this basically is how much a site influences the heat map that's generated. Click search, and you get a heat map of Roosevelt Redware that you can, again, take a picture of, and it goes into your download package. And as you move in on it, it kind of breaks apart. And you can see that the real hotspot for Roosevelt Redware is in the Safford Basin, San Pedro region, and into Tucson. There's the Tonto Basin here, and then there's a southeast Arizona. You can also see that there's actually Roosevelt Redware as far east as El Paso. And if you want to then look at the sites that this heat map is being generated by, you can toggle the site markers on, and you can see all the sites that are generating the heat map. And you can, the ones that are outside the obvious heat map they just have so low frequencies that they're not contributing much to the heat map. So the site buffer radius, just to show you what it does, if I move it up to 10, basically each site, the assemblage from each site is affecting the area between sites much greater than it was at 5. So you'll see a much broader distribution. And if I bring it down to 1, you're going to see a much more discrete distribution with the sites that are the real hot spots for Roosevelt Redware. So it's just basically how much a particular site is influencing the heat map. All right, let's go back to explore sites just quickly. And I just wanted to show you the custom Polygon tool. Basically, you can draw your own project area. And I like the Tonto Basin, and I know there's a lot of sites there. So I just draw a polygon or a shape. You can just click it. Return to the start. And then let's get rid of everything else, so that we're seeing basically all the sites within that polygon. It's asking me, do I really want to do this? Because it might take some time, but I know it won't take very much time because we've sped up the website quite a bit. Well, at least it shouldn't. There we go. So yes, we've got 494 sites in the Tonto Basin. Now let's save these sites for analysis. I'll clear the ones I had before. And the ones here are the ones to add. And the full screen isn't, yeah, sites to add. And so now these sites are saved for analysis, or they will be in a second, because all the data from all those sites, all the ceramic and obsidian data from the sites are loading. Okay. From here, I can either go to some canned analysis stuff that we have and run a variety of tools on the data. And these take longer to run. You have to queue up the jobs and run them. So I actually ran one ahead of time. So I'm going to run the temporal allocation of room allocations of sites. This is basically breaks up rooms into time intervals. You press run this tool, you can select or deselect the sites, or just select them all. Press OK. And then you can name the job. There's some parameters, minimum decorated ceramic count, what's the maximum number of rooms you want to use out of the total room count, and then you can run it. And I won't because I already did. And then results. You click on just one of the sites. In this, I could have either done it site by site or aggregated all sites to see the entire Tonto Basin. And in this example, I basically aggregated all sites. So you're seeing a graph of room counts by time period for all the sites in the Tonto Basin. And at 25-year intervals. And from my knowledge of the Tonto Basin, it's not a bad graph. It's a little low on this end because pet houses are underrepresented in the excavations of the Tonto Basin, but by the time you get to 1200, that's a pretty reasonable estimate. And then with the decline in the 1300s, and then really hard seeing people architecturally in the 1400s. And at the maximum, we're approaching 3,500 rooms. So if you wanted to convert this to population, you would essentially just have to figure out how many people per room you wanted in your analysis. And one final thing to show is that, okay, you've got all these sites saved for analysis still in the Tonto Basin. I want to do my own analyses with them. There's an export function, and it gives you several options here. Feature records. This is going to be an aspect of the next version of Cyber Southwest when we start loading up and ingesting intrasite level data. But our artifact master lists are also available here. But let's just go to artifact records. We're looking at settlement level data. Next, it shows you a list of your sites again, and there are many of them, over 400, and you can deselect as you want. And next, you can play around with some parameters with time and the artifact types. And as I said before, we are now starting to add chipstone, groundstone, and plants and animals to Cyber Southwest. But at this point, it's just Obsidian and ceramics. So let's press ceramics and confirm. And now you have a list of all the ceramic tables from the Tonto Basin organized by citation, like when you searched for ceramics by the site record. And for sites with multiple citations, you either have each citation or the summary. And then finally at the bottom of the list, if we wanted to actually see everything in the Tonto Basin, you can see there's like 363,000 brownwares. What's the grand total? Yeah, we're looking at over 700,000 shures at this point. So that's what I pretty much wanted to show in terms of the functionality of Cyber Southwest. And once again, this is the 1.0 version. Josh, do you want to talk about 2.0, or should we turn it over for questions here? Or
I think I'd like to jump in and say a few things, but you can probably keep it in the 5 to 10 minute range and then go to question answer after that. I think if you want to just leave this screen up, I think that works for me. I had, yeah, I am a couple of thoughts. First one, I just wanted to make sure it was clear to everybody on the call that like getting an account with Cyber Southwest is super easy. It's basically the same as signing up for almost anything on the internet. You give us your email, you'll get emailed a confirmation that you aren't a robot, and basically you'll be in. You don't have to pay anything, it's free. And the if you are somebody who's say a student, or if you're somebody who's got sort of a legitimate need for the higher level research tier access, basically we ask you to contact us, and we need a short justification of what you need that access for. Another thing I wanted to mention is that sort of at present, I think we've got about 600 registered users for the Cyber Southwest site. Tends to grow a little bit every month, and typically traffic-wise, we're seeing usually between 3,000 and 3,500 hits on the site most months. So we're getting a fair amount of traffic, but not YouTube numbers or anything like that. And another thing worth mentioning is we're working on really building out our, it's called support materials. So very soon we're going to have a video series that runs through a lot of the same stuff that Jeff ran through tonight, and kind of just explains sort of how to use all the different features on the site. And so that should be going live in probably the next few weeks, give or take. So there'll be tutorials and video support. I mean, fundamentally, like if you hit the contact us button on the site, that email is going to end up in my inbox and I'll answer. And so if you've got questions, or I mean, frankly, if you see something that doesn't add up, or if you see bugs or anything like that, please just let me know. We're constantly doing fixes and repairs. Part of what's pretty interesting about this project, Jeff mentioned sort of the history that goes back 20 plus years at this point, and there's just been a lot of people contributing. Even the folks who are best at data entry occasionally make mistakes and things like that, so we're always doing fixes. And so last thing I'm going to mention before we turn it over and start doing some questions and handling things in the chat is that sort of the next phase of this project that Jeff's referenced a couple times, called Cyber Southwest 2.0. It's going to have, if 1.0 is a kind of database, it's basically a mile wide and an inch deep. The whole point of 2.0 is to add depth. And so we're going to be getting into the individual rooms and sub features, and basically collecting data and making it available on the site at the resolution that the archaeologist pulled it out of the ground at. And so there's going to be just it's going to take us years to flesh that out so that we have good coverage across the Southwest for that, but it's starting to happen. And a lot of my work day to day is just trying to figure out how to pull in chipstone data sets from analysts that work in the Four Corners versus work in Southern Arizona, and sort of make them all talk to one another. And so as part of that, we've also implemented this tribal working group, which Jeff sort of mentioned in passing, but we've got a handful of tribal members from around the Southwest that are helping us make decisions on what's appropriate to include here, so that we'll be frankly doing our best so that sort of offensive or inappropriate materials aren't being uploaded to our site. Anyway, so I think main message I want to say is a lot of this is moving pretty fast. We're constantly upgrading things, both in the database on the back end and the web app. And so I'd ask you just to check in periodically and sort of see what kinds of new features we've got, what kinds of new data sets have been uploaded. If you're interested in contributing at some point, just make contact with us. We may be able to find a way to get your data into the system. And with that, maybe we want to quit sharing the screen, Jeff, and turn this back over to Butch and Al and see if we can answer some questions for some folks.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm not particularly techie, but I think that's a very powerful tool, and I really appreciate you guys talking about that for sure. It might take me more than an hour to learn it, I guess. But so we do have a couple of questions and maybe even a comment or two. One of the easiest questions, I think, is, maybe Arizona could have used those ball courts earlier, but, that aside, a couple of questions. Okay, Julie Binko has asked, how can we access this support? Is it going to be communicated to users?
Yeah, so the plan at this point is that on the very front page, when you first go to cybersouthwest.org, there's going to be a link or a button at the top of the page that says Learn. And that Learn tab or Learn page will have videos, tutorials, basically, and you won't need to have an account to access that material. So you won't need to log in, and should be easy to sort of do your initial orientation and then go from there.
Okay, thank you. Alan's asked the question, where is the Contact Us button?
Okay, yeah, it's on that home page. I don't know if it's worth bringing it up to share it again, but and I'm pretty sure if you scroll down to the bottom, there should be a Contact Us there.
Yeah, I've got to log out, and I think to get to
if you go over, just click Cyber Southwest on the left-hand side, the upper left-hand corner. Nope, not that far up. The logo right there.
There we go. Okay. And where's the?
I think if you scroll all the way down, is where he put this. F8 at the bottom. Nope. Oh, it's probably all the way off. Well, yeah, perfect. You found it. Okay, so Contact Us would do it. And I think there's another one at the bottom, but on my version of Zoom, there's a menu bar in the way. So
I don't know if you're ending that answer or not. So
yeah, yeah, I mean, just that's where you find it. So
Yeah, that answered my question. Thanks.
so Julie also asked, is there analysis on the site to show social interaction, or were those produced independently?
So the short answer is like that bright blue and white network map that Jeff showed, that was produced in some separate software. But we do currently have a tool on the site that can generate something similar to that. So yeah, those maps come from presentations they did years ago, and it'd take a minute to put together something comparable, but the short answer is yes, you can do that right on the site now.
Okay, thank you. here's a question, or I think it's a question from Leaf to everyone, is photography, and there's a question mark. Does that ring a bell?
All right, so I if I'm understanding the photography question mark, was, can we host images either of sites, excavations, ceramic types, things like that? Short answer is right now we're not doing that. Some of that has to do with just managing our servers, our memory, and I mean, frankly, if we wanted to bad enough, we could solve that. But our intent at this point is more to be linking out to sources that have better platforms for hosting images. So, for example, I think was it the museum in Northern Arizona has a bunch of ceramic
Southwest Museum,
virtual stuff, like for basically pointing our ceramic type information to those kinds of resources rather than trying to just recreate that on our own platform. I think we're a little bit, in terms of, say, photography from excavations and things like that, it's probably just not something that it's not a problem we want to solve right now. I do think at some point it's pretty likely we might be bringing in PDFs or scans of site maps, things like that, but not locations, just room blocks, things like that. But we'll solve that problem when we get to it. We got a lot on our plates with just doing the database stuff right now.
Yeah, I guess I would think so. Here's a comment, it's a kudos from Kelly Taylor. I'm certainly impressed and can't wait to use it. Thank you.
Yeah, great, thanks.
And I would second that as well. And I'm going to go over to, I need to acknowledge Allison Hayward asked the question about the ball courts. So let's go. If Marilyn Guida, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, if a tribe no longer formally exists, was it possible to determine the location of their occupation? I'm thinking of the Monzo in the El Paso area, because I know one individual who knows the Monzo history and contact with the Spanish.
That's a tough question. I think you would have to conduct your own research. I mean, Cyber Southwest potentially could be a tool in that, but you would have to basically kind of write your own research design on what material culture you would be linking with that particular group. And then using Cyber Southwest to explore those types of artifacts that you want to look at. I'm not sure. We do have that ancestral lands map layer, and I don't think Monzo is an option on that map. I don't know. We mainly included just Southwestern tribes on that map from the Native Lands website. So, yeah, Josh, I don't know if you have any comments.
I'm not sure I could elaborate on that too much. I mean, I do think, as far as I'm concerned, sort of El Paso still falls in the Southwest, but I'm just not familiar enough with what with the specifics of what she's asking. I guess I'd be a little wary of, even if the tribe is not a federally or formally recognized outfit, there are very likely people around who know more about it than we do. So.
Okay, well, thank you. So I'm going to go back to Allison for a moment. She's actually saying, seriously, is this really interesting? Well, no, that was the question. seriously, this is really interesting, but she's asking, are you aware of similar efforts in other regions? I'm a Californian, she says.
All right, so it's all in how you get your emphasis on that, right? But,
Seriously.
so yeah, one of the things we've actually been contacted by a couple of other outfits that are, could we do a cyber Great Lakes, or could we, like they want to kind of export our platform or something very like it to their region. And so I think that while I don't necessarily see our team and our site expanding to take over all of North America or whatever, like I do see a path where that we would be partnering with folks in different areas. And because basically once we've built it, and you need to swap in a different database, but a lot of the website side of this could be ported to just about anywhere without a ton of new work. So.
And after 20 years of trying to do this, I mean, we certainly could, I think, be a source of advice and what to do, what not to do, and the various pitfalls of trying to standardize huge data sets across large areas, how to do it right. Because we certainly had to backtrack quite a few times, retrace our steps.
Philip Hunger is asking, will you eventually be adding petroglyph sites?
This is something we have gone sort of in circles on ever since I came onto the project 3.5-4 years ago. I think that we are interested. So much of Cyber Southwest 1.0 was focused on settlements, right? So it was residential sites. Just was not designed or built very well for the kinds of sites, that are petroglyph sites. How do you deal with sort of a boulder that's got petroglyphs on it in a database that's all about room counts and things like that? And so we're interested, and we're trying to figure out sort of what is the best way to collect and present this kind of information to the public. And I think it's on our to-do list, I guess, is basically what I'm getting around to. But it just presents because it's just such different data than what sort of makes up the core of Cyber Southwest, that it's a reach for us.
And there is with Aaron Wright's work there and Henry Wallace's work and others, there is a fairly standardized system we could use, and there's a huge database that we could tap into. But there's also sensitivity issues. I mean, this is available to the entire public, and there are potentially sensitivity issues related to even the general of rock art sites and the type of rock art that you would have publicly available on a platform like this.
You guys have a pretty long to-do list. Speaking of sensitivity, does NAGPRA enter into any of this?
Not directly, but we do not support mortuary data on the website. So as of there aren't mortuary data presented on the website. We've made that decision.
Okay, well that's pretty good. So Christopher Taylor wants to know, is this only excavation data, or does this Cyber Southwest also include survey level data?
The short answer is there's a little bit of everything. And I think and where we've got reports with excavation data, that's what we default to. But there's examples of all of the above in our.
There's a lot of survey data as well. Yeah.
I think this might be actually maybe the last question I see anyway, is AJ Vonrix has asked, one, thank you for the overview and preview on the site buildup. Any Cyber Southwest web data or even gut sense of which current canned stat analyses are run most frequently?
Actually, if I'd have done a little prep on that, I could tell, like, we save a little bit of info every time somebody runs an analysis. So I could actually tell you exactly what that is had I been prepared for the question. But I think all right, so most of our canned analyses it's been driven by the researchers who have been the principal investigators on these projects. So yeah, going way back, they were really interested in demography. And so we've got tools, like Jeff demoed that do room allocations and basically help inform on demography. And then the other tools, like we've got a bunch of tools that are primarily aimed at doing social network analysis and doing, calculating the similarity metrics that would allow you to do those kinds of social network analysis. So given that the tools we have are, we're steered in their development by, these faculty members and their students, and they also are the ones that tend to click on the site and use those all the time. I bet if we pulled up some stats on what got used, there would be a lot of the demography, room allocation analyses, and then slightly less on the network analysis stuff. But yeah, the room allocation stuff's pretty cool.
Also, there's a chronology tool that uses Bayesian statistics that was developed by Scott Ortman. I think it gets used a lot for analyses.
Well, Marilyn sort of sums it up here. Marilyn Guida, she says, thank you for a very interesting presentation. Glad I'm a retired museum educator and not a professional archaeologist.
Yep,
So,
not bad.
and I guess, Julie Binko is saying thanks, and I will be contacting you, Jeff.
Okay.
And then she summarizes, but does anyone care that the Big Ten will rule the tourney? So, well, unless there's any more questions, which we've sort of run out of questions, I guess. I don't see
Just a comment, Butch. Jeff and Josh, could you please put your email addresses in if you want people to contact you? Put it in the chat.
Put it right in the chat, sure.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you guys very much. Well, on behalf of Old Pueblo Archaeology Center and all the people that have tuned in, I would like to thank Dr. Watts and Dr. Clark for a very interesting program. And I even understood some of it.
What we're going for. Yeah.
And I guess we'd like to thank all of you out there in Zoom land for joining in. And don't forget to consider giving a donation to Old Pueblo Archaeology Center. It helps pay for not only these programs, but also the education programs and so forth. So Dr. Clark or Dr. Watts, do you have any last thoughts you might want to say?
I would just say if you're swimming in data entry on ceramics or Obsidian, I would check out Cyber Southwest first before you got too far down that road.
Yeah, the master lists that we're making available, I mean, it's the amount of work that's gone into getting those lists together so that we can pull data from all kinds of different analysts in different parts of the Southwest into one single research platform. Yeah, you could save everybody work down the road if you check our lists and figure out how to compare them to your code sheets and things like that. So.
Dr. Watts and Dr. Clark have both put their email addresses into the chat, and as well as Alan has put in several things on how to contact Old Pueblo and future programs and what have you. Alan, did you want to say anything more about that perhaps or not?
Yeah, that was pretty much the first thing I put into the chat was a number of Pueblo Archaeology Center links that you can go to for various aspects of what we do. And if you're unsure about the links, you can just go to our main page, oldpueblo.org. Click on the links there.
Well, I guess on behalf of Alan and the board of Old Pueblo and all of you out there in Zoom land and Dr. Clark and Dr. Watts, I want to thank everybody and say good night. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Josh. Thank you, Butch. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.